Hey everybody, Lisa here for another installment of Wet Hair Tarot. Yes, I try to get these hashtag 78 days videos made before I head to work. It's going to mean occasionally that I'm just all drippy. Sorry about that. So today is day 8, and our focus is the Chariot. Now bear with me, the light is a little bit cattywampus in this setup. Okay, so this is the Jean Dodal Tarot, and I'm trying to remember 1700 something. I can't remember offhand. I'll refresh my memory and write it below. But this is this is a Tarot de Marseille style deck. This is the Fleur Noire, the beautiful Fleur Noire edition. I mean, just this is like the dreamiest of dreamy card stocks, and it's just beautiful. It's a facsimile, but it's been restored. The colors are gorgeous. The lines are sharp. And yes, the Chariot. So one of the things I was talking about yesterday with the Lovers, or the Lover card as it's understood in the Marseille deck, L'Amoureux, is that this is a card that insofar as it's about choice and freedom, the Tarot de Marseille Type 1, the earlier versions of the tarot, emphasize the ways in which our choice, really highlight the ways in which our choices, even those most personal choices about what life path we take, how we pursue our desire, how we define our trajectory in life, even those most personal choices that feel completely intimate to my heart, those choices are in a really important way not our own choice, right? I mean, the choices we make, we've got Cupid here. It's not just that Cupid strikes you and then you choose between the two women who represent, remember yesterday I was talking about Los Dos Caminos in the Grand Esoteric Tarot, the two paths, potentially a higher and lower, a more worldly versus a more spiritual path. The choice between those, two roads diverging in a yellow wood, it's not just that Cupid strikes you and so you don't make those choices, but even Cupid is blind. In the Tarot de Marseille Type 1, Cupid is blind. In the later Tarot de Marseille decks, Cupid can see. So really this highlight that our choices, while they feel like they're ours, they're conditioned by all sorts of things, right? And for me, the path of mindfulness is really a path of coming to accept who we are, which means accepting the ways in which the things I'm drawn to, I can't ultimately push away my own desires. I can work with them, I can understand them, I can reconfigure them, I can delay them, I can resist them, but I can't get rid of the things, the ways in which I'm pulled towards some things in the world and repelled by other things in the world. So the path of mindfulness is really a path in a certain sense of choosing my choices, like accepting who I am. I might, like just in my own world, in some ways I'm drawn to the life of a monk, of a nun, of a contemplative, but yet I talk too goddamn much. I'm too bossy, I'm too much this emperor figure, right? I'm too much this leaderly kind of, I want to do stuff in the world. So I may wish that I were a monk, but I don't think I'm going to be a monk in this lifetime, right? And I have to choose my choice not to be a monk. Does that make sense? I'm asking an iPad. The iPad is saying, yes, Lisa, that makes sense. Okay, you know what I mean, I hope. So we move from this card, which is about choice, but also about this dilemma in which, our choices in a certain sense are shaped for us, into a card that's all about the will. All about the ways in which I'm pushed and pulled by competing impulses. So, in many ways, this card recalls the Chariot in Plato's Phaedrus, which is the chariot as an image of the soul. And the story in the Phaedrus, is that our souls, it's an allegory really, our soul is like a chariot where, we're the charioteer and we're pulled by I think the right horse is the good horse and the left horse is the bad horse. I can't remember actually if Plato distinguishes between the two, but if you think about the Rider-Waite-Smith imagery where we have a black and a white sphinx, you know, I'm pulled by my noble love of the good, and I'm also pulled by my lower instinct toward mere sensual gratification, toward unreason, toward irrational desire. And the wise charioteer has to find a way to balance these competing forces. So again, we're in this world of the dualism of tarot, right? Where there's a higher and a lower, los dos caminos, the good path, the bad path, or the better path and the worser path. And how do we balance them? So the idea of the chariot, right? The image here is of the will, right? And of my ability through my own application of effort, through my own discipline. If you think about the ways in which the Hierophant card can bespeak a kind of discipline, a kind of relationship to external mores and values. How can I, through my own discipline, tame my horses and pull myself in the right direction? So, you know, that's traditionally what this card is about. Like the will as our ability to harness the sides of us that make us human, right? And here's the thing, you know, I've got two horses. I'm not just going to like get rid of the bad horse. What pulls the chariot is my ability to balance these forces. So that dualism that's everywhere in the tarot, and the tripartite structure where you've got like two and then one. We saw, you know, the relationship of the angel and the Rider-Waite-Smith to the lover figures. In the Marseille, things tend to be a little more complicated, so we have threes and fours, but still that structure that the Rider-Waite-Smith imagery pulls out of the two and the mediating third impulse. How do I balance my dualistic nature? How do I create balance? How do I create movement forward? So yeah, okay, that's what the tarot is pointing me to do. And what's interesting to me is the way in which this chariot, which is all about movement forward, actually looks like it's never going to move anywhere. Like, you know, there kind of are no wheels. It's a stable platform. It really is a image that sort of envisions movement as coming out of stability. It is an image that takes the stability of the emperor and imagines how that force of authority and power can propel us forward, which is a little bit hard to imagine because the kind of stability that might occur through the balancing of forces, through my imposition of will, how does that stability lead us into movement? How do you go from the seated position of the emperor into the dynamic, victorious position of the chariot? Incidentally, I think the emperor in the Dodal is really interesting. So notice, you know, in this traditional Marseille version, that the emperor is not sort of facing forward in the way that he is in the Rider-Waite, but the Dodal includes both the Roman numeral 4 and the Arabic numeral 4. And I think that's really interesting because the Arabic numeral 4, there aren't Arabic numerals anywhere else in the Marseille deck other than, nope, there aren't anywhere else, I think, other than in the Dodal, here in the Emperor. I could be wrong. If any of you know that I'm wrong, correct me. But notice how the 4, the stability of 4, of that number 4, of the 4 staves that create the stability of a canopy, of a house, right? The 4 legs of a table, the 4 points of the compass. All of that stability here is echoed in the way that the 4 is an image of this seated position, right? How we go from the ego 1 of the magician to this even more stable position of the 4. Okay, so we've got that stability, the 4. If you think about the way that the Marseille works with the geometry of the suit, so, you know, the 7 of the 7 of Cups echoes the stability of the 4, but then gives us this image of movement forward with the dynamic insertion of the 3. So the 7 that is the Chariot is this marriage of stability and movement, and it's based on a stability that balances forces. So the movement comes from that activity of balancing of force. So that's kind of what, the Chariot is all about. In my own life, and this comes back to this question of mindfulness, the only way that we can balance these competing forces in our life is to really acknowledge them. To not just suppress or resist the things about ourselves that we don't like. To not just try to put a bit in the mouth of the bad horse and say, I'm going to pull on these reins and make you do what I want you to do. We have to find a way to work with our horses. And this is what I'm trying to do right now. Okay, the lighting of this video is kind of yucky. I hope this all made sense. Not sure if it did, but here you go. Thank you for your practice.